Hi guys. Today's video is dedicated to all the people who reported me over the past year. One of the most famous mysteries in the music world in recent times. Who knows why singers are often at the center of conspiracy theories? For example, Michael Jackson, who supposedly faked his death to escape media pressure, or going way back in time. The case of Elvis Presley. He also supposedly faked his death to live a normal life. The main character of today's topic, however, is a much more recent singer who managed to achieve great success already as a teenager. Avril Lavigne. As I was saying, many of you have written to me asking to investigate this case further, and until now, I have always considered it necessary to do so. I'll say right now, I don't believe this conspiracy theory at all. But faced with your strong insistence, I decided to cover the case anyway, but trying to maintain a more objective point of view. So here is the harsh truth about the Avril Lavigne mystery. I'll start by explaining the origin of this theory and what its main points are. A few years ago, a Brazilian blog published an article claiming that the singer had died. In 2003, she was replaced by an actress named Melissa Vandella. Melissa would basically be a lookalike of Avril. This gave the record label the idea to go through with the replacement. To avoid losing the huge profits that came from the sale of her records and her concerts. There are some decisive points supporting the theory, fiercely defended by conspiracy theorists. I will link them to you one by one and then analyze them with you in the second part of the video. Avril Lavigne's style changed drastically from the time of her incredible success with Under My Skin in 2002 to the moment she reappeared strongly on the scene. A few years later, Avril would undergo a truly incredible change. The rebellious punk-style girl had disappeared. She was much more feminine, had practically set aside her skateboard to wear high heels and present herself as a more sensual character. This was something her most devoted fans didn't fully appreciate, to the point where they thought that girl wasn't the same person. That long period of silence seemed to confirm this, even though the official version says it was due to a difficult time for the singer's health, as she fell victim to Lyme disease. The explanation isn't convincing. According to the conspiracy theory, that time would have been necessary to prepare Melissa Vandella for the final replacement. The voice of the current Avril is different from that of the old Avril. According to conspiracy theorists, the singer's voice in her early years of success was deeper compared to that of the current Avril. If we listen to her during a recent concert, there is no doubt that her tone sounds noticeably different. I was able to see this for myself. Since it's very difficult for a low tone to become higher, this fact has been considered further proof of the replacement. The song Slept Away is said to be dedicated to the real Avril Lavigne. The song Slept Away, included in the 2004 album Under My Skin, is said to be further proof of the singer's death. In fact, it talks about a person who has gone away and left a big void in the singer's heart. The hidden message in the lyrics would be this: Melissa Vandella was referring to Avril and her suicide, a fact that would have left a big void not only inside her, but also in the world of music. The interview on a Brazilian television show. In an interview on a Brazilian television show, when asked about her death, Avril would have appeared nervous, and she would have shown a certain hesitation in denying the rumors about her alleged suicide. On that occasion, the host asked her if the conspiracy theory was real, if she was really Avril Lavigne, or just an Avril lookalike. She hesitated then, showing unusual nervousness. This would be yet another proof that the replacement really happened. Physical differences. The last piece of evidence for the conspiracy theory, according to many the decisive one, would be the physical difference that would exist between the old Avril and the new Avril, Melissa Vandella. The nose is definitely different. Some moles seem to have disappeared, and the new Avril would even be 3 centimeters shorter than the one from 2002. Faced with all these oddities, here comes the conspiracy theory. As I was saying, some might consider it just a silly thing, but believe me, there are really many people nowadays who consider it real. My idea from the beginning has been to be objective. So all I have left to do is to analyze these points and try to give them a logical explanation. Style. The first point is very simple to explain, but how can anyone even remotely think that a person's style always stays the same? Avril was just a young girl when she began her journey into music, a rebellious young girl, or maybe that was just the character that had been created for her. Over time, the singer did what we all do, grow up and adapt her style to her new personality. A girl, in general, reaches a point where she wants to feel more feminine, more sensual. What sense would it make to have a rebellious punk character at the age of 25 or 30? And then, let's be honest, if the theory were true, why was Melissa Vandella allowed to completely change Avril's look? If the idea was to deceive her fans, the most logical thing would have been to keep the same style and the same way of dressing. In short, this evidence doesn't make any sense. The voice. It's true that some singers keep the same tone of voice throughout their entire career, but there are other artists who have changed the way they sing. Avril is simply one of them. Age and development also play a role. It's true that a woman's voice doesn't change as drastically as a man's, but certain changes can be noticed. Besides this, just a simple change in your vocal technique can make a big difference when you sing. So the most likely thing is that Avril simply changed her technique, or that she needed to do so because of a change in her voice. Sleeped away? The explanation is simple. It is absolutely true that the song is dedicated to a person who left, leaving a void in the singer's heart. But that person is not the old Avril, rather Avril's grandfather. She had a very special relationship with her grandfather. She has emphasized this on many occasions. When he died, it was natural for her to want to dedicate a song to him. In short, this evidence is just simple speculation. The interview here too, a simple line of reasoning is enough to dismantle the supposed evidence. Imagine for a moment that you are a famous person traveling to another country for an interview, and during the interview they accuse you in a certain way of not being yourself, of being an imposter. What would your reaction be? Now imagine that until that moment, you had never heard this story, that you aren't aware of the conspiracy theory and someone asks you if you committed suicide. Well, any normal person would be left speechless, incredulous, and the reactions could be different, including appearing nervous and literally not knowing what to say. In short, this evidence is also just the result of a misinterpretation of reality. The difference is physical. And finally, let's analyze the topic of physical differences. Let's start with the nose, which is the most obvious difference. Have you ever heard of plastic surgery? Because here it seems like no one has considered the possibility that Avril Lavigne simply got a nose job. By the way, this kind of surgery is quite common. The fact that she doesn't openly admit it is another matter. But there are people who avoid talking about these things and who, in some cases, may want to keep it secret. I know well. There are many factors involved in a photograph, like lighting, just to give an example. In some photos, a mole is more visible, while in others it disappears entirely, or maybe Photoshop was used. So I don't consider this evidence to be convincing at all. Lastly, the height. This is just nonsense. Who would have bothered to measure Avril's height and notice the 3 centimeter difference? Besides, a shoe, with or without a heel, makes a difference. Logically speaking, does it really seem impossible to determine a person's real height from a photo or a video? And when you do, the results can only be approximate. That being said, Avril Lavigne really died and was replaced by someone named Melissa Vandella. In my view, no, or at least there's no evidence confirming it completely. But you know that my philosophy is to respect everyone's opinions and ideas. So if you think I haven't mentioned any stronger evidence, I invite you to let me know in a comment. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe, like, or share it. See you in the next video. L'inspiegabile.